Hey everybody, welcome back. Steve from the Pinball Room. Thanks so much for joining. Today we're going to talk about what has been the absolute most frustrating part of this whole entire project. A project which I love to death, but there's been something that has just absolutely driven me crazy because I've not been able to solve it until just recently. And it's not like it's really a crazy hard thing to do. You're going to hear me go through and talk about the answers, be like, gee Steve, you probably could have figured that out earlier on, couldn't you have? I don't know. There's just enough variables and there was just enough frustration with me that it took me multiple attempts to go through and fix it. I would think I'd fix it. I'd play my machine, take it on location. It would rear its ugly head again like crazy. I'd come back home. I'd work on a few things. I'd check some things, think it was working again. I'd start playing. It would happen again. A couple of you have called it out in the comments on my videos also, and that is the flickering of the LED lights on the playfield. Flickering when they're not supposed to flicker, mind you. Okay, because there is flickering and flashing that is programmed and happens, but it's that nasty, ugly, you're sitting there playing, you flip a coil, hit the flipper, hit something else, and all of a sudden lights that really shouldn't be going off kind of flicker or flash. Sometimes they just stay on, they won't turn off, and all sorts of craziness like that. Again, it's really not that difficult of a problem to solve, but it's taken me months and months. And again, there's been lots of time in between where I'm like, whatever, I give up, I'll solve it later. And then I go through and I'm playing and I'm thinking, you know, I think it's working pretty good. And then I'll sit there and I'll really pay attention and I'll be like, oh no, that light is flickering. That one's doing it too. And anyway, it's just come and gone and come and gone and come and gone. And it's never really gone away until finally it did. I sat down and I was just a little bit more meticulous, a little more patient, a little more thorough in what I did. I found the culprit. Well, I solved some culprits, introduced a new culprit, took some time to track that culprit down, and then finally knock on wood, but it's been almost a month now, and I haven't seen this problem again, so I think I finally got it solved. If not, yeah, you'll hear about it, me complain about it in another video. Okay, so again, the whole thing is all about these lights flickering. Now, for those of you who are new to homebrew pinball and all that, let me kind of walk you through what's really involved in this. Again, it's not a lot, so it shouldn't take very long, so let's jump right into it. All right, so just to put it here to where you can see pretty much the whole play field, and yes, the glass is off so we can touch things and talk about it. Again, in any pinball machine, especially your homebrew, you're gonna have a series of inserts with lights. And most of us now, because RGB lighting is so affordable, we have RGB LEDs. That is, it's a single bulb that can create whatever color we want, right? Red, green, and blue, and it mixes them all together. I'm strictly doing RGB. There's also things such as RGBW, where you have an LED that has a red diode, a green diode, and a blue diode or emitter. And there's also a separate dedicated white emitter that strictly does white and won't change colors. And you tend to get a little more true whites, and you can have different types of whites. You can do a cool white, a warm white, and you can kind of dial in exactly the type of white you want. That is trickier on just an RGB because RGB is strictly giving you white by just cranking up all three channels in equal amounts, and those blend together to give you a white. Now, so you've got the inserts that are being driven by these LEDs, and then you've got your GI, your general illumination bulbs, or you'll sometimes hear me call them global illumination from my days in 3D animation and art. And these bulbs here for me, they're all these ones that are frosted. I think you can see some here across the back. Okay, my back box, they've got kind of these frosted domes that the light shines up through to make them kind of glow. Okay, so those are kind of your general illumination. And I've got a handful of them scattered throughout, just again to try to add light to the play field even when inserts aren't on. I arguably probably need a few more in mine. I don't have any flashers yet either. That's another thing that'll be coming up in a future video. I'm working on an idea to do some RGB flashers, but there's not exactly an out-of-the-box solution that I'm finding so far that I really enjoy. All right, so all that being said, the issue that I've had with my pinball machine is you'll be sitting here playing the game. I've done some shots over my shoulder. You'll be able to see it in other videos where you're going through and you're playing, and an insert that should just be on solid, right? Let's say you've claimed a bonus. It should just be a solid blue. I'll hit the flipper is the most common thing that causes it, or a pop bumper goes off or anything, and that light will like flicker really fast, on and off, flash on and off, or maybe just all of a sudden turn off, or all of a sudden change color, or start to kind of slowly shift color, all right? These are kind of the common symptoms that you don't have your LED wiring set up correct. I've been playing with this for quite a while. So let's look at what's going on underneath here and some of the mechanics involved, and we'll talk about the things that are the most common problems and how to solve them. I got to put just a little bit of a plug in here for these really cool little little protectors, cabinet protectors for your side rails for if you have any cabinet art or anything else, or my machine is I think I'm just like a 1/16 of an inch, a little wide on my play field for this cabinet, and so I tend to kind of rub the sides. Anyway, you get these off Pinball Life. Not the cheapest things, but man, they are handy. So make sure you don't scratch your cabinet anymore. Alrighty. All right, so now that we've got the balls out of the pinball machine, there we go. All right, so now that we've got the balls out of the pinball machine, we can see underneath it, you see the lighting going on, right? Okay, and we've got a little bit of a mess of wires. I've been changing things, so the wiring, yay, is gonna need to get redone one more time before my final play field. But that's okay, we're learning as we go. So let's see, what's some of the most easy inserts you can see? Probably the ones up here for the songs, and right here in the center, there's not too many wires covering these. So let's focus on these right here. Now you'll recall from my earlier videos, I've got a system where I've got these 3D printed white diffusers that are between the actual LED bulb itself and the playfield insert to help kind of diffuse the color and make it very, very smooth. So you can kind of ignore those white things. That's not the problem whatsoever. And then on top of that, we basically just have the LED, and it comes on a small little circuit board. Let me show you a close-up. And again, there are different versions of these depending on whether you get yours through Fast Pinball or through Pinball Life, where they have some of the P-Rock ones, or probably a few other places. You might be getting some that have nothing to do with pinball, like some NeoPixel ones at Adafruit or other locations. There's lots of places you can get LEDs. But the ones I got through the guys at Fast, this is what came with my starter kit. Okay, it's a simple little circuit board. It has indicators for voltage coming in, voltage going out, so you can put these in a chain. And then on the opposite side of those header pins, so you don't have to solder, you just put some quick connects right on, some pre-crimped wires. There on the other side of the board is just this emitter diode, this square white piece. And if you're able to see really close, and I'm not sure how well it's going to focus, probably not good enough. But anyways, there is basically 3 different little sections within that for the different R, G, and B. It's hard to see on the camera. Anyway, this is it. It's a very simple thing. It's really just this white piece and then a board with just enough room for traces, and they have a screw hole put in here as part of this to make it easier for you to fasten. They've gone ahead and have some pre-installed headers, so you don't have to solder the connections, though soldering, as much as it would be a pain in the butt, soldering is always one of your best choices for a solid connection. Anyway, so this is what you have. So each one of these inserts has a set of wires. Doesn't really matter what colors you use, so long as you're consistent with your colors. I'm using ones that are mostly red, yellow, and black. Red being voltage for me, yellow being ground, and black being the actual data line, right? That sends the signal of what the color should be for each one of these. Now, you'll put these in a series, right? And they're kind of looping and connecting. Like I have a cord coming up here underneath. I don't know if you can really see that. It goes to one LED to the next, and they just kind of hop around to their nearest neighbor, up around one side of my playfield. The other chain goes up around the other side. You eventually hit them all, right? And the way you define these inside Mission Pinball, inside your config, will determine how Mission Pinball interprets these and knows which one's in which order, and so which one to turn which color at which time, right? You can name them, you can tag them, etc. The software coding has not been the issue, so I'm not going to dig any deeper into that. It's all been a physical, electromechanical issue that I've been dealing with, okay? Now, the common issues that people run into, I'm not the only one, though I probably ran into them it probably took me longer to solve than many people in the groups I'm part of. Again, you'll come through and you'll start having these lights just kind of flash and change color when they're not supposed to be. And the very first culprit that most of us consider is, are the connections just loose? Is there just a bad connection? Is this little setup here not good? And when you first check it out and you're like pulling the wire pretty good, you feel like, no, this has pretty good connections. My crimps are good. I'm using pre-crimped wires from Alibaba, which are cheap and probably not as good as making your own. That's one thing that several people recommended to me is like, hey, don't use those cheap ones because lots of them are bad. And it's true. I've gone through the couple of thousand I ordered at the different lengths, well, several hundred, and I don't know, 1 in 20 has been bad. So like their quality control is not great over there wherever they're making these. And you'll have ones that are just bad. And I simply replace it, put in a new one, then things would start working again. So you need to make sure that every single one of your wires and your connections are really good and secure on these headers. Now I went through and I did that, and I checked for bad wires, and everything seemed to be good. Connections seemed to be strong. I still had the issue, okay? Another very kind of a basic initial thing you need to understand is that the voltage is going to drop along the length of your chain of lights. And you're only running a 5-volt a voltage line through this, right? Only 5 volts of power. So, and I don't know the exact amount, but I think the rule of thumb is basically if you find somewhere along your chain and you're checking voltage, if it starts right around 5.02, something like that, you know, if it drops much down below like 4.8, I want to say somebody maybe said 4.7. I made sure mine didn't ever drop below 4.9 because I was getting so concerned about the voltage. But if the voltage drops too low, then you start to have issues also with like the integrity of the power being sent and the ability for the coded signal through the line to really be consistent. Anyway, you don't want your voltage to drop very much along this line. And the longer it is, it's invariably going to drop. There's just resistance. The wire itself has a little bit of resistance, very minimal, right? But if you took this wire and stretched it out 100 feet, the voltage is going to drop across that length. That's the reality of the world we live in, right? And every time that there is a connection, so this crimped connection that goes into this header pin, etc., there's a little bit of a impure or imperfect connection, and so the voltage drop might be even a little bit more. Now we're talking like very, very small, normally unimportant amounts, right? But when you multiply it across, I don't know, I've got 100 LEDs in here across 2 different chains. So we've got about, 45 lights in one and like 65 in another, and each one of those has 2 connector points. So, we're now talking a couple hundred across the whole entire machine, and the wires. Anyway, it adds up. The general rule of thumb that I've been told, that people have kind of experimented and found out, through these general connections of wires and some sort of a crimped header onto that board, if you have more than about 2 dozen to maybe 30, some people say 25 to 30 LEDs, that's about as far as you can go before the voltage is going to drop enough that you're going to start to have issues. And so the rule of thumb is, or the recommendation is, hey, about every 20 to 30 LEDs, your mileage may vary, you should add in another source of 5-volt power. Okay, so obviously, if you remember from the back box, we have the actual control board. A Neuron is the new one by Fast. I'm using their older setup, the Nano. My next machine will have a Neuron. Can't wait. But it's got headers that go out, that send the signal out to control the first set of LEDs, the second set of LEDs, right? And it can do up to about 64 LEDs per channel, assuming you're just doing 3 channels per LED. Kind of confusing how I'm saying the word channel. But anyway, you get about 64 RGB bulbs, we'll say, right, or lights per channel, and they've got 4 channels. And so 64 is more than that rule of thumb of about 20 or 30. So if you only have power coming from your control board out to your LEDs, and you have it doing a chain more than about 20 or 30 LEDs, you're going to start to have issues with that chain because the voltage isn't going to be high enough. Okay? So what do? Well, coming into your very first bulb, your very first LED, and I'll show you here with this one again, you're going to have a wire from your board that's bringing in, again from either red, 5 volts. Okay? Yours ideally would have then the ground probably be black and then a data line be in another color. You're going to have 5 volts coming in from that. So your first LED, when you if you take your multimeter and check the pins right here, you should have 5 volts. It should not have dropped down below 5 volts. And then as you go across, by the time you get to that 20th, 25th, 30th LED, if you check again here at the end, your voltage is going to probably be lower. And it could be too low. So what you do is basically the same thing you did on the other end. You need to run in from a power source directly to that 30th LED. Now let's imagine we're at the other end of the chain. And you need to run in a wire that is also directly bringing in 5 volts plus a ground. So you need both your line and your ground, your load and your neutral. Okay? Your line and your neutral. Those both need to be coming in. That way you're getting power at both ends. Okay? So both your first LED and your 30th LED, you've got full power. By the time you get to around LED 15 in the middle, the voltage should not have dropped so much you're ever going to have any issues with it. Okay? So that's one of the first main things. Make sure you have enough power coming in. So you'll often put power on both ends. And if you have a long enough strand, you can go up to 64 of these things, right? Well, you might need to have voltage in the beginning, voltage at the end, voltage in the middle. If you have enough of them and your voltage is dropping, you might need to have voltage at your first LED, again at your 15th or 16th LED, at your 30th LED, maybe again around your 45th LED, and at your 64th LED. Now that's putting in about every 15 LEDs. That might be more than you really need. At the end of the day, you really just need to kind of check and see how much you need and where things are dropping, because maybe the connections you're using, the wire, etc., are just dropping a little more than others. You might get away with it and only have to have it at the beginning and the end. You'll need to experiment and find out what's actually really working. So I had gone through and done that. It was the first thing, saying, oh, okay, I've got like, 45 LEDs on one, about 60 on the other. I definitely need to put in some more power. So I put in more power at both ends. And I still had the issue. Not as bad necessarily as I did before, I didn't think, but I still had the issue. So I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'll insert voltage in the middle of that also. So my 15th, about my 25th and my 45th, or my first, my 20th and my 45th in the middle. And between 1 and 64, I did that. And I said, okay, let's see if that makes it better. And it seemed like it did. It worked for a little while. And then I really had people beat on it, and I started having issues again. I thought, okay, it seems like it's better, but it's not perfect. And then I started noticing something else. Down here, where my first line comes into my first LED on this side, I noticed that one of these just was consistently falling out. So I said, okay, well, I guess that this connection, as much as it seems sturdy, with enough rattling around the pinball machine and things shaking and transporting it back and forth to locations, it was coming loose. And okay, maybe this one is just slowly, the connections are kind of getting stretched out and worn out. So I replaced it and put a new wire in. It worked for a little while, but then that one started falling out. So then I pulled out the old glue gun, because what does every DIYer use? A glue gun to hold things in place. So I got out a glue gun and I started encasing these headers in glue, saying, okay, I don't want this one to fall out. And I did it on one spot. And then that stopped happening, so I thought I was good. And then I realized there's another light that was very problematic. It was like one of the ones that if it was gonna go bad, it's gonna be that light was gonna go bad. So I filled it with its connections, put a glob of glue on it, and I did that around to probably, 10 or 12 of my LEDs, thinking, okay, I think I've handled all the problematic ones. And before I went to ketos this last month, I thought things were going really good. I'd still see flickers every once in a while, but I was like, maybe I've got some bugs in my code to where I got light shows that are kind of competing and one's maybe kind of going on and off real fast. I wasn't positive because, that's possible. I'm not like some magic coder, right? Then I went to ketos. So after driving it there on a bumpy road, taking it out of my truck, setting it up, letting people play on it for about 20 minutes, it started happening really badly. Now, luckily, people were nice. They don't know what my light shows are supposed to be. They don't know. Maybe I'm just bad at making light shows and have random things going off at certain times, and I thought that they maybe thought that's how I want it to be. I didn't really say much. My wife is there, and I'm like, see that? That's bad. She's like, shh, don't tell anybody. I'm like, I know, but it's like driving me crazy. I'm sitting there seeing it happen. I'm just like, ah. So I came home from that a few weeks ago, and I said, all right, I just absolutely have to get this figured out. So one of the things that had been on my list that I'd put off, that I really should have done earlier, was swap out and upgrade to the new and improved LED boards that Fast offers. Now, again, there's different LED board solutions out there. The ones I had gotten originally from Fast over 2 years ago now, and they had since grandfathered these or discontinued them and used different ones. Instead of these basic little headers here, which are nice and slim and easy to use, they had replaced their LED boards with this version, which is virtually identical on one side. All right, on the side with the emitter, like it's really the exact same thing. You can see the lettering and all that's a little bit different, right? And the spacing of the pins is different. But on the other side, it's a very different beast, okay? It has these white plastic header connectors that help that when you put the wire in, when you put the connection in, it adds extra pressure and helps kind of lock them in place. So if I put this on, if I can see, because my eyes are getting bad in this light, and wow, I'm struggling with this. I need my glasses. No, I refuse to wear my glasses. All right, one of the wires got bent a little bit. Dang, I'm getting old. Okay, whew. That was embarrassing, it took a minute. All right. It's even harder to put it on because it's so tight. But then once it's on, it is really, really on there tight, okay? So I said, okay. Aaron and all the fine folks at Fast had decided to upgrade to these for what reason. They had enough people complaining about them having loose connections. I had these sitting around because I ordered more of these from Aaron. I said, okay, I need to go through and just replace all of mine with these and see if that makes it better. So I'm going through and I replace all of these and I boot up my machine and I blow a fuse. And I was about to shoot myself, something. I was so frustrated. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. And I went back through and I, okay, unplugged the chain, put a new fuse, plugged one in, felt it got warm, hurried, unplugged it. Okay, this is the chain. And I went through like LED by LED, making sure I hadn't reversed the wires anywhere. Everything checked out. None of the wires were, reversed or flip-flopped in and out. I hadn't done that on anything. All of them were great. And I said, okay, I've already double checked all the wiring. Everything's snug. What else could it be? So I had to pull out my multimeter, my handy dandy multimeter, and I went through and I checked every single board. So I would go to the first board and I would unplug the wire, leaving that, going to the next one. So I had power coming in, but then that was the end of the chain. So I did that with the first one in line and I tested it for voltage. I'm like, okay, 5 volts. We're not getting like 9 or 12 or 15 or anything crazy. We're getting 5 volts like we should. Plugged it in, go to the second one. Made it to where that was only the first 2 LEDs were in the chain. Tested its voltage, went up. At one point, I kind of got, off being accurate. I said, all right, I'm gonna check the other end for the read. I'm just gonna hurry, put them all in, check it really fast. Okay. And I noticed, wait a minute, negative 4.98. It took me a second, honestly. It wasn't like the third time I kind of read. I'm like, wait a minute. That's a negative. Why is it positive? Like, do I have my ends of my multimeter backwards? No. The first one's positive. Why is this one negative? Suddenly my voltage had somehow like flipped and gone negative. So I went back to what I was doing. I think I was on like LED 7. Okay, LED 7, 5 volts, 8, 9, 10, all the way up. LED 27. At that point, as soon as that one was connected, the voltage flipped and went negative. Again, I double, triple checked that everything was plugged in correctly, but as soon as I pulled that actual board out, put in another board and plugged it in, it was where it should be, positive, like 4.98. Okay, continue along the line. Everything else was great. By the time I got to the end of the chain, everything was still positive. And my voltage was down to like 4.92, still totally high enough, well enough. Plugged everything back in, no fuse blew, all the lights worked. I played several games. I played, I'd say easily, well, not necessarily full-length games, and my games are kind of short. I'm not all that great, as many of you, like to remind me. But I've played a couple hundred games since then, and not a single issue. All right, moral of the story. If you skip to the end here, make sure you have everything wired correctly, right? You haven't flipped, flopped ground and voltage, the inline and the outline, input and output of the boards. Make sure all that is set up correctly first. Double, triple check it before you turn anything on. And then make sure you're using a connector. If you're getting the ones from Fast you've ordered within the last year, you're gonna have these newer boards and you're gonna be good. If you're getting your sources from somewhere else, just make sure you have a very, very solid, secure connection. Because as you know, pinball machines do rattle and bump and shake and rattle, and things are gonna come loose. So make sure you have a very, very strong connection. And then again, if you have a long strand of LEDs, more than about 2 dozen, plan on putting an extra line, tapping in, as they call it, more voltage, about every 20 LEDs probably, right? Depending on how long your chain is. And again, use your multimeter, just double check and make sure your voltage isn't getting below, I forget the exact number. Somebody else can correct me in the comments, but I'd say not below really like 4.8 to be safe. Again, all of mine were able to set up to 4.9, but just power on both ends, even along a strand of 60 LEDs. So it won't be a whole bunch of extra power you need, just a little bit. And then you should be good. Yeah, so bad wiring, being a little bit sloppy, being inconsistent, bad light boards, etc. You get the proper voltage going in and take care of all those other things, you really should be good, all right? So good luck to you. Hopefully this is helpful, and hopefully my frustration is gonna be maybe a little source of either camaraderie if you're having similar frustrations, or just make you feel better going, wow, Steve, I took care of that way simpler than you did. And so good on you for taking care of things even faster than I did. We're all learning at our own pace, right? So don't give up, don't get frustrated, hang in there, because now it feels so good to know my lights finally work. It wasn't really a big deal before until they stopped working and they kept breaking over and over, and then it became such a big deal where now I feel this huge sense of relief now that they actually really finally do work. Didn't have to be that way, but we each have our own path. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching. A little bit of a longer video, again, because, hey, I just ramble. But thanks for watching. Hopefully this has been helpful. I hope to see lots of you in June. Just booked my hotel room out there for the Northwest Arcade and Pinball Show in Tacoma, Washington, June 7th, 8th, and 9th. I will be there with my machine. You'll be able to play it. So if you're anywhere in the Northwest region, I encourage you to show up and go there. It's a great show. There's gonna be lots of homebrews. All the guys from Fast are local. There's gonna be lots of machines there. I think they're gonna have like a PinDev Con again like they did last year. We're gonna have people giving talks and just working on machines there, and it's gonna be a great time. So come up, rub shoulders, get ideas, get inspired, bring your own machine at whatever state it is. If you have one you're working on, drive it up. Okay, it's gonna be a lot of fun. Okay, everybody, have a good time pinballing, and until next time, just take care, have fun, and if you haven't started your own pinball machine project, why not? Get on it. It's only money, it's only time. It's worth it. Get in, have fun. There's a lot of great people here. You're gonna make a lot of friends, and you're just gonna have a great time. Okay, everybody, take care. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.